Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council Workshop Meeting. The Council thanks you for being a part of our city government. At workshop meetings, the Council discusses issues but takes no formal action. The agenda packet is available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco.wa.gov/agenda. Please note that the City Council meetings continue to be held remotely and may be accessed through GoToWebinar. This meeting is being also televised live on Pasco TV, channel 191, on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and also streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, and YouTube channel. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Through proclamation number 20-28, Governor Inslee extended the directive making temporary changes to Open Public Meetings Act. These virtual meetings will continue until the OPMA restrictions are lifted. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and/or questions for items not on the agenda by contacting the city manager or city clerk or using the feedback form on the city's website. And again, we're here tonight at the chambers with less than 5 people. We are using our masks, have sanitizers and disinfectants, and everything's been cleaned, and we're well over our 6 foot, practicing social distancing, and just wanted to continue to relay that message so that we can continue to be safe and continue to have our numbers go down in our community. So with that, I would like to have a roll call, please.
Council members Alvarado.
Present.
Maloney.
Present.
Milne.
Present.
Roach.
Present.
Serrano.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Present.
And Mayor Martinez.
Present.
All 7 accounted for.
Thank you. Would you rise with me for the flag salute, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you for that. We'll move right along to item 4, verbal reports from council members. I will start tonight by just wanting to appreciate and thank Council Member Serrano and Roach for spending a good hour, more than an hour, interviewing candidates for some committees. Spent a lot of time going through the applications, and just wanted to say, and I know Serrano and Roach will agree with me, and they can share their thoughts, but wow, just love and just appreciate the talent and the people that want to help out in our community, because each and every one of them were just impressive. So with that, I will move right along. Anybody else have any comments they would like to share for verbal council member reports?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Maloney. I just wanted to ask if we were going to touch on, if you want to touch on a little bit of the retreat we had over the weekend.
Well, I can. I would share that we spent Friday afternoon and Saturday up until about 2 or 3 o'clock discussing the council goals and going over many aspects of the city and where we were and where we are and where we want to go. And so again, that was quite a few hours that the council met virtually over the computer. It was a challenge. And you know, as Mr. Councilmember Serrano indicated, it wasn't quite like we were expected, but we worked with what we got, and we were able to accomplish a lot of things and get into some pretty in-depth topics of what we wanted, and appreciate so much that the council was asking the hard questions that we don't always want to talk about, questions that we don't want to bring up. But each and every one of them stepped up to the plate to do their part, and we're looking forward to. We're not totally complete with the process, but we're looking forward to sharing that with the community as soon as we're done. Anybody else want to share anything on that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to second that. You know, it was over 10 hours of virtual meetings on Friday night and on Saturday. That was That was quite the ride, and that was with us finishing up a bit early. I really look forward to the opportunity when some of the restrictions are lifted and we can get together as a council. And I hope that we'll take the opportunity to do so and have an in-person meeting, regardless of whether we're ready for another retreat and goal setting. That we have an opportunity to come together and continue to gel as a team. So just wanted to add that to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, Mayor, this is Councilman David Milne, and I want to say that I did attend the DPDA meeting last week, and it was a really good meeting, and I wanted to give a special thanks to Gustavo for all his hard work. They've given out $125,000 worth of their own money to businesses that didn't qualify for the CARES Act, and so we just went over that and some of the other things. So overall, I know the city and DPA is doing their best to help businesses survive the COVID-19 pandemic, and just look forward to the future.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we are going to have a couple of items on miscellaneous discussions here later on in the meeting. But for now, we'll move right on to section 5, items for discussion. And the first one is Ask Pasco Community Engagement Tool. Mr. Zabel, do you want to start on that? Or?
Well, this is in response to public and our own staff's own curiosity on what we could possibly do, the advent of technology, as well as we've had a lot of council discussions about this, including this weekend. And we thought it was timely. We've had a group working on this, primarily headed up by our finance director, Rachel Sigdell, but working with our IS folks, Jesse Rice and John Funfar, communications manager, Angela Pichon. And we've made some pretty good progress on having an application that I think would be very beneficial to members of the public in engaging with the public, whether it's a concern or just passing on information or what have you. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Sigdell. She's going to kind of walk us through it and let you know where we're at in the project and what the future holds. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Mr. Zabel, and evening council. The tool that I will be presenting to you today will mostly be in web format, but I do want to caveat that with the fact that we do have Android and iPhone or iOS applications, so apps on your phone available as well, and the fact that we're still working on the tool itself. It looks really simple when you're presenting. However, a lot of things a lot of steps that we have to test. And I definitely want to give credit for all of the people throughout the city who have been working on this. We have a lot of departments who are working to test this from a user's perspective. And our next step after we have a few of the issues resolved will be to test as a group on how we would implement this as a city and how we would use this as city staff. So as a user's perspective, this is what you would see in the city's website. And it includes a few more things like how to pay your bills. So you can just click on that and go to our utilities website, the jobs that are available at the city, any news, and the city events as well. And further down on the page, you see a bunch of options, and you'll see that we've been testing a lot. This is the messages on all of the service requests that I've put in so far. But people do have the option of not having an account and submitting a service request anonymously as well. So as a user, I would...
Councilmember Alvarado?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Risha. I don't know if there's a screen that could be shared. We just see each other.
My apologies. Just a minute.
Thanks, Ruben. I was wondering the same.
Let's see if I can figure this out. Or John will be helping me here.
Well, I can see it here.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Mr. Alvarado. I definitely would have finished my presentation without really showing you my screen because we can all see it here. So this is the main page that I was talking about. The fact that it contains some of the links to the website that might be of interest to our residents, and the fact that this is customizable, so we can add more as time goes on, or we realize that there are more functionalities that people are interested in. So this is the home page. However, if there is a resident or a visitor who is interested in letting us know about issues throughout the city, or just simply wanting to contact the council or the city manager's office or utilities or public works for all of those reasons that people contact the city for, you can simply go to requests and pick from a list of request type. And again, these are the ones that we currently have, but they are highly customizable and we can add more as we get more customer feedback. If they had issues with animal complaints, for example, a confined animal, let's say, all they would have to do is show where the issue might be. You can also search throughout the city. You can search via an address, or just basically click on an address that you're interested in and or where the issue lies, and move on and give us more details. Dog, I'm not very creative. And you can also add more pictures of the exact issue. Maybe not so much in a confined animal, but if you do have a picture so that you can show and further elaborate on what the issue is. And you can also choose to keep it confidential here as well. And you submit. And this is it. This is all you have to do. And what happens from a city's perspective is that we get to see all of the requests in this dashboard. It takes a few minutes to kind of come through all of the new requests, but this we believe will be the most valuable for the city staff, because what this does is essentially collate all of the phone requests, all of the emails, all of the requests that currently go through several systems at the city. And we're able to look at this in a holistic point of view. So if you have a phone call about a traffic light that is not working, then 3 people might have gotten calls about the exact same issue. Maybe the police department, maybe our public works engineering department, maybe the customer service department as well. And what this does is allow us to track all of those requests and issues coming through and be able to track where they're at, how many people it's affecting, and be able to make a decision on which are the issues that we need to act upon right away, and what are the ones that we can maybe wait for a little bit. And so really a data-driven decision-making is what this will allow us to do. So what you see this on the page is what the city employees would see. And these are, so this is the confined animal that I, Richa Sigdel, just did as a citizen or a resident. And I could simply click on that, look at further details of this request. And of course I'm demoing, so this is taking way longer than it usually does. But usually it's a lot quicker. I'm not sure what's happening right now. And I can communicate with the person who is sending this request to us. And the beauty is also the fact that there is the back and forth. And so we can get more information and about the issue, how it's impacting them, or just the fact that we're aware of it and that we will get to it. And when we close the ticket, the user who submitted the ticket will actually get the notification that the ticket has been closed. And this also allows us to track all of the still opened or not acted upon tickets or service requests, and essentially look at how do we communicate with our residents on when we expect to resolve those issues. Or let's say that we get a request that says the dog's barking, but when we go there, we can't really identify the issue. We can go back and work through to a solution. If somebody submits it anonymously, we will still deal with the issue, but there's really no going back and touching back the person who submitted the request to us. So at this point, I could just say, thank you. We will take care of it. And this request will go back to the person who submitted it. So this is a really neat tool to communicate with our citizens and our residents and our visitors and business owners in a way that is streamlined, centralized, and also documented so that we know what we've done. Like, for example, if the traffic light was not working and we've already sent somebody out, but somebody else at the city gets a call, they might go into this this dashboard and try to put in the service request and realize, oh, in this very location, there was another such request that the traffic light is broken, and I see there's a comment that we've already dispatched someone to go fix it. So just even over the phone or via this tool, we're able to communicate with our residents on the issues that are happening throughout the city, but also know what is happening throughout the city as city staff as well.
Director Sigdal, this is Councilwoman Barajas.
Yes.
I have a question. Is this different from the Track It complaint system, or are we steering away from that Track It system?
Oh, this is different than the Track It system, and we are steering away from it at this point. This system would replace it.
Okay, thank you.
And partly because Track It's no longer supported.
Yeah.
So this is Serrano. I love this, and my question is, can we get this onto our Facebook page?
Yes. One of the future steps is also rolling this tool out. So we're on the very first stage of, we have a workable product, and we're testing everything, and I mean everything. My inbox is full of all of our users who are testing this, and sometimes the Spanish language translation is not quite right, so they want us to fix that, or sometimes the tool is not working as intended. So we are very close to moving past that first phase, and that is why we wanted to present this to you. The second phase would be training our city staff on how to use it and creating some guidelines around it, like what kinds of phone calls do we enter here, how do we all work together so that we have data that is standardized but then also helpful for everyone. And then our third stage is to roll it out in a way that many of our residents and visitors are aware of it and will use it, but also maybe creating a little group to test it as a resident. So we will definitely be using our Facebook page, press release, Twitter, and all of that to roll this out to the city.
Excellent. I really appreciate that, because I think a tool like this needs to be advertised as broadly as possible. This is certainly a way for us to achieve our community engagement that we're seeking. So again, I really appreciate this. This is a phenomenal tool, and I know you're going to have a lot of mail to comb throughout the next few months or whatever it's going to take. But I'm excited to see this. Because I get questions, and I think we all get it as council members. Hey, there's a sprinkler, or there's something going on in this area. Well, now we can say, check our Facebook app and become a friend, so that we have more people that actually like us. But also, I really appreciate you utilizing technology to make life easier for the city staff, not just council.
Yes, absolutely. We will definitely work on making sure that that rollout is as broad and reaches as many people as possible. So
Ms. Sigdal, this is
yes.
for Roach.
want to just thank you first for the presentation, but I also wanted you to perhaps speak a little bit to anybody who's listening as well to the benefits of this tool as it pertains to phishing attacks.
Oh, yes. Yes, so one of the challenges that we've had in the last couple of years, and probably an issue that will not be going away anytime soon, is some very sophisticated social engineering phishing attempts. Cannot tell you the number of times that we get emails from Dave, and I will do my quote unquote Dave, about his needs that are immediate. And of course, because I know Dave so well,
Where's my gift cards?
Yes,
Yeah.
where's my gift cards?
Yeah.
But they are getting really, really good at it, where a new staff member who gets a call or email from the city manager's office about, about anything might jump on it really quickly. And the same thing is happening between, they're realizing our org charts and of course our phone numbers and our email addresses are out there. We also get emails from our citizens and our residents and our visitors. And it's getting really hard to know what is real and what is a phishing attempt. And I like to think of myself as somebody who is very sophisticated about it. However, recently we got an email from our HR department that I did click on, and now I have to go to a training session. So these are becoming very complicated in that we are now starting to just only open emails of people that we truly recognize. But as a city government, all of our residents and all of our visitors and all of our constituents are, we're not going to recognize all of them, and we're not going to recognize all of their email addresses. So that is something that we foresee as a big issue in terms of our community engagement, especially in form of emails. And so we believe that this would be a good way of centralizing all of the communication as much as we possibly can. And this will make it really easy. If something is coming through this tool, we know that it's legit. And we can move forward with that communication through this tool and not have to worry about whether it's a phishing attempt, whether this is really, something that I should be replying to. Is this a link that I really should be clicking, especially if our citizens send a picture of something that we're now afraid of, opening, because you never know what it could be. So this would be very helpful. Furthermore, and this, of course, it depends on what your comfort level is, but taking out some of the phone numbers and the email addresses from the website is definitely something that many organizations are doing at this point, just to prevent that very thing. But this would give you an avenue for as council members and for us as city staff to engage with our community in a safe manner, and for them to engage with us in a safe manner as well.
Well, I sure.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Yes, and thank you, Richa, for this presentation. When did you say when is this planning to go live?
We're hoping within the next 2 to 3 months.
Okay. Yeah, and that's going to be real helpful, and for people like me who try to actually stay away from social media as much as possible, this phishing attempt, and they're getting so good. Mm-hmm. Even out at the Hanford site, they train us, they drill us, but these people are specific, and sometimes it just gets away from you. And then we have to report it to our IT department. But mm-hmm. Yes, appreciate this. Going to be a phenomenal tool. Looking forward to getting it going. And yes, I think this is going to be just a great communication tool, and appreciate all the work that's going into it.
So just a couple comments. I think one of the benefits to our community members is going to be the consistency of how we're handling some of these citizen or resident complaints or concerns that they send our way, or even just suggestions. It's going to keep a record, particularly where it comes to, and I know Richa touched on that, but it's going to keep a record. So we'll have some really good documentation, and we can identify patterns that may emerge, which are going to help us solve the bigger problem rather than dealing with symptoms. Because of the way it's set up, it won't have to go through so many layers to get to the right person. So the actual problem or concern is going to get to the folks that are going to actually be working on it right away. I mean, a lot of stuff may come through a council member, then to me, then to the department head, then to the person actually doing it. This is going to shortcut that and get that right to the person. And also we'll have the follow-up and the programmed reminders and things like that in the application itself are going to keep folks on task and keep that resident informed as to what's happening, which is going to obviously create a much better situation in terms of customer service for the community member. And, long term, depending on how we use this thing, it's going to lessen the city's liability too, as we are resolving problems sooner and seeing them, particularly if they're ones that are due to some sort of systemic failure that we can deal with. This is going to really parse that out much more quickly.
Great.
So.
Awesome. Any other comments from council members?
This is Councilmember Maloney. Oh, please, Ms. Bras.
Oh, sorry, real quick. Just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and I love that there's going to be back and forth communication with the person submitting the complaint notification. That way there's a show of follow through and follow up on the issues. That is a major plus. Thank you again for the presentation.
And on that topic, Ms. Berhaz, I would like to add, this is something that I commented on our console, which is what something a city employee would use to communicate. And the other side where I said, thank you, we'll take care of it, this is the other side that the person who submitted the request would see. So, and if they submitted this in Spanish, we would be communicating back to them in Spanish. The application, the iOS app and the Android app use the localization of the language feature within the phone. So if your phone is set in Spanish, then the app gets translated. However, you can use it for any of the language if you are using Google Translate. So there's a lot of languages available.
Perfect.
That is awesome.
Yeah. That's
Mr. Maloney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Ziegler, of course, thank you so much, and this is going to be wonderful. But I'm actually much more interested in the mobile app. So could you speak a little more to that? I know, for example, my wife and I, when we're walking around the streets, we report a lot of graffiti. We see a lot of issues that really should be looked at by city staff. But we have to wait basically till we get home, remember the address or the cross street, and we can't send a picture or anything very, very simply or at all right now. Yeah. And so I'm really hoping that we'll be able to pick up our phones, take a picture, be able to send it right then and there. So please wow me right now. Come on.
So I really do wish I could. I tried to see if I could take snapshots of the page itself or the screenshots of the screen and do a presentation. It just didn't feel right. What I can tell you is that it looks almost exactly the same. Where you will see that you can download the app, and I'm looking at it right now, and you can. The main page looks exactly the same, and you can, and this page looks exactly the same as well. So you would be able to walk around the city, and as long as you've given the app proper, what is the word for it? Where you allow them to access your location, you would be able to just drop a pin on the map, so you would not have to know the address. You just have to be in the vicinity. Or you can just scroll through the map, like I had mentioned earlier. So you would be able to see something similar to this, where you would just be scrolling through your phone and dropping a pin on it, and be able to also upload the pictures and do it exactly the way that I showed on the web page here.
Great. Yeah, I will happily volunteer to be a guinea pig on this if you want to load up to the council, if we can load it to the council iPads, or if I can install it on my personal device, I'd be happy to do that. Like I said, whenever my wife and I go on walks, it's rare that we don't have at least one incident of graffiti to report, as a for instance, and sometimes it's way more than that. So I'll happily be a live test on this. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Looking forward to getting this operating and up and going. It's pretty exciting. Thank you for the work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll move right along to code amendment, hearing examiner duties. Do we have, Mr. Zabel, do you want to?
Rick White should be online for
Rick
that.
available? There he is.
I am, Mr. Mayor. Hello, thank you. This issue goes back to mid-2019 or so, maybe just a little over a year ago. The city converted to a hearing examiner system for land use and project permitting decisions, much to the satisfaction of WCIA. And since that time, staff has noticed a handful of instances where the responsible party, the hearing examiner and/or the planning commission, was not modified consistent with the original ordinance 4431, which was adopted again roughly 12, 13 months ago. So this proposed ordinance, I believe, is minor in nature and is probably consistent with a housekeeping kind of application. It's consistent with the original intent of the ordinance, and makes changes so that the hearing examiner is the correct party identified in our PMC in a variety of circumstances. So unless council has any questions on this, I'll just leave it there and try to answer whatever questions you may have.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions for Mr. White? So these proposed changes will be, if it all goes well, it'll be on the next council meeting?
Yes, sir. They'll be on the September 8th agenda.
Okay. All right, I don't hear any comments or questions. Sounds like some housekeeping, and we'll be looking for it at the next council meeting. Thank you. Next, we'll go over to item C. Mr. White, do you want to take this one as well?
I certainly do. Thank you again. And this item, completely different, concerns an intent to petition to annexation for roughly 14 acres at the southwest corner of Road 52 and Wernett. When council receives an intent to petition to annexation, the state law requires that you have to take action and decide on 3 factors. First, whether the city will accept the annexation or modify the proposed annexation boundaries. Second, whether it will require the simultaneous adoption of zoning regulations. And third, if it will require the assumption of city bonded indebtedness. So when this comes back to council on September 8th, we'll be asking council, at least the staff will be asking council, to accept the annexation and geographically modify the boundaries so that the annexation is enlarged to reflect the area on the very last map and page of this agenda report item, basically to square off the annexation boundaries. Second, that the annexation boundary will not require the assumption of, will not require the simultaneous adoption of zoning regulations. That will be done through our hearing examiner, consistent with our existing PMC regulations and policies after public meetings. And third, that the annexation will assume a proportionate share of bonded indebtedness. And again, just for council's information, staff has continually worked with this developer to provide for city utility service to this area. Sewer service in particular is problematic. It was originally dependent on a very expensive sewer lift station somewhere in the vicinity of 52 and Pearl. We've kind of changed strategies and have come up with a way to provide you sewer service to this area and approximately 3 times the number of dwellings or single-family residences that might be accommodated by the proposed plat that the applicant intends to develop. So there's a lot of balls in the air on this. It's a very complicated proposal. Once we get the annexation settled and the zoning settled, we'll be working in much greater detail on the provision of city utility service for this roughly 14 acres plus 6 or 7 additional acre annexation area.
Okay. Council have any questions or comments for Mr. White?
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Mr. Maloney.
Mr. White, I guess what I'm curious about is understanding you said there's been a bit of a preliminary plat. What sort of density are we looking at for these units? Or lot size?
Well, it started out with RS20 zoning, which is the default zoning in the county. And the annexation applicant, the developer, requested city water. We proposed the alternate proposal to extend sewer with the smaller modified lift station. It's gone from roughly, and I hope I'm not misquoting here or not recalling correctly, but if I'm thinking back, I think we started off with 16 single-family lots in this area. Now we're at approximately 38. So the provision of sewer service, of course, is what makes that happen. And it also lets the developer accomplish a much more efficient subdivision design because of septics and things like that aren't very conducive to wise use of land. So a little more than double.
Fantastic. Glad to hear that. I mean, the simple reality is that when we're looking at expanding, if we don't expand here, we expand into the county to the north. So this is obviously a really delicate balance, and thank you for working on that. And I understand that there's a lot that goes into trying to make sure that we can accommodate everyone as best we can. So thanks for the efforts and look forward to seeing what comes out of it. Thank you.
Yeah, and my understanding as well is that the addition of the lots and houses will help with the numbers for being able to serve with our fire stations and all on the safety aspect of it as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. And then the increase in density helps the developer pay for his portionate share of the sewer lift station. So it works.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments from council members? So we'll look forward to seeing this in the hearing in the next September 8th meeting. All right, thank you. Next, we'll move on to item D. This is a subject for Chief Bob Gear on the Lucas automated CPR machines. Mr. Gear, are you on the line? Are you muted, Mr. Gear? There he is. Chief of Gear, can you hear me? Give us 1 second.
Chief, we show you unmuted, but we can't hear you.
you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Chief Gear.
All right, I have trouble with my home computer, so I'm switching here. Hold on a second. I will go back and say the questions about the infill with the J.J. Kelly. That's exactly the kind of growth we need to avoid future fire stations by keeping that infill east of Road 100. Helps a lot because we're able to fill those or serve those areas. So talk first about the Lucas chest compression system. I'm avoiding turning on my camera because I'm not sure if I'm going to lose you guys, but I'll give it a try here. And so, Richa, are you able to bring up the first slide about the chest compression system? I lost you.
We can see I can see the slide. Can the rest of the council see the presentation?
No, I cannot.
No, I cannot.
I can.
Chief, I'm sorry, this is John Funford, Communications Program Manager. We do not have that PowerPoint, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, it was sent to Debbie. Well,
I pulled it up in the council packet. That's how I'm pulling it. I know it's not the same computer screen.
It is, Councilman Serrano, thank you. Yeah, it's in your council packet. So the concept with the chest compression system is that instead of our personnel having to do the CPR manually, which with what we call high performance CPR, you'll see that in your council packet. High performance CPR is 100 plus compressions a minute. And our current protocol requires us to do that for a minimum of 30 minutes and up to 45 minutes. That's always been difficult, but now even with the COVID concerns and the level of PPE that we're putting everybody in on every CPR call, it's causing us to rotate crews from other stations through calls and have to literally rehabilitate, similar to what we do on a fire, our individuals. So in discussions with the city manager, it was suggested that we look into purchasing what's called automated compression systems. Does the compressions for the people, does it at about 110 compressions per minute, and it's also hooked up to married to the LifePak 15 and records everything that's going on with the compressions there, so we can see exactly how many compressions per minute are going on. So it's going to significantly reduce the number of people that we have to send to a CPR in progress. Right now, we send 7 people initially on a CPR in progress. If it turns out to be a true long-term CPR, we rotate 2 or 3 other stations through there in the 45-minute period. The most a firefighter can do is about 2 minutes, and then he has to rotate out, and another person has to come in. As they get more tired, the accuracy of the compressions go way down. So we purchased these Lucas compression systems that are manufactured by Physio Control and match up to the Physio Control life packs. They cost about $15,000 a piece. It came out of our life pack replacement fund, which by the end of this year will be sitting at about $462,000. So it's not a new expenditure to the city. It's money we've been setting aside for years to maintain our life packs, and now we'll also add the maintenance of these Lucas systems out of that maintenance account. So I don't know if there's any questions from council.
How many did you say you were going to need, Chief Gear?
I'm sorry, again, Mayor?
How many did you say you were going to need?
We're buying 4, 1 for each frontline ambulance, and we'll rotate them. We have 6 life packs currently because we have 4 frontline ambulances and 2 reserves, but we're buying 4 Lucas systems this year, and we'll just run those on the frontline ambulances.
I would be actually very interested to, as I see the picture here of the apparatus, that round part that I'm sure goes on the chest and provides for the compressions. I can only imagine that it would be more consistent than even a firefighter who may once or twice press too hard and probably cause some more damage. What is the statistics on how this machine works versus the human aspect of it?
Well, the salesman tells us it's much better. So, but I'll tell you what, can you ask me that next year when we do our performance report and we see how our resuscitations change? Because we know that as the guys rotate through there, and I watched them the other day, to be honest with you, off of Lewis Street, down at the Jones Motel in the alley, it was 90-some degrees. They worked a guy for 45 minutes there, and they were literally beat. They're in full gowns, face shields, masks. We had to rotate multiple medic units through there. You know the quality of the CPR has to go down. And we know, since we went into the high-performance CPR program, our resuscitation, successful resuscitations came way up. But we know when if it's what we call a shockable rhythm, meaning like in VF, when we get there, by protocol, we have to work on a minimum of 45 minutes. And that's a long time, and it takes a lot of people to do it. So I think anecdotally that we're going to see a higher resuscitation rate than what we're seeing now, and we already do a pretty darn good job.
Well, I'm really interested. We're making a $60,000 investment and potentially saving a lot more lives. So it would be nice, Mr. Zabel, if a year from now or whenever we can get this this information to see how we're doing with this. And
at the very least, recall that we had the fire annual report just a few weeks ago. That would be incorporated into the fire annual report. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other comments or questions by the council?
This is Councilman Buttercup. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
This is Councilmember Roach, and I just wanted to quickly say that I appreciate that, $56,000 is just a, like tiny drop in the bucket, especially when it comes to saving lives. So, whatever we can do to help our city staff to do that job is well worth the investment, in my opinion.
This is Councilwoman Barajas. Chief Gear, I just wanted to say thank you for bringing this to light. I took a CPR class at one of our Block Watch meetings. Ben Scherer was there, and we had a simulation on one of those bodies. Unfortunately, my simulation died because I was not fast enough or precise on that, doing the compressions. And so, yes, I can believe it is very hard, arduous work that our firefighters are doing out there. And, kudos to them for doing it in full gear. I don't think I could do that. I killed the simulator.
Thank you, Councilwoman Barajas.
This is, I appreciate the presentation as well. I think just two thoughts. One, Chief, in the event that something malfunctions here, are you going to have a backup plan of, Station X is covering, Station Y needs to be prepared in the event of a malfunction? And two, this is to Craig, not Council Craig, but Attorney Craig. To the extent that we're looking at purchasing these, I'd like you guys to look at the liability of the event something malfunctions. Let's say this gives a great shock to either A, an employee, or B, someone that they're helping, just to make sure that there's no unexplored liability. I would assume the manufacturer would assume that type of defective product, but let's just make sure, and then whatever training is required to cover that gap, let's make sure that these individuals are trained properly. That's more for Chief Gear. So I think it's a great investment, but there's always risk when you bring on a new product, especially in a life-saving mechanism. So I guess Chief Gear, if you got a second to talk about that contingency planning, if it's already in place or will be. Thank you.
I do. We currently send 2 medic units on any breathing stoppage. So there will be 2 units that go to every call. And Richland uses the same equipment. Kennewick uses a similar equipment, but not quite exactly the same. But so everyone will have some compatibility and backup. So I'm fairly confident that we'll be okay there. That particular piece of equipment actually doesn't deliver the shock. The shock is recommended through the life pack, which is hooked up to that. There is no automatic shocking of people. There's a recommendation, and the medic has to make an interpretation through his training whether to deliver that shock. And that's really the liability of the medical program director that teaches them and certifies them to do that. So that is really pretty well covered. Firefighters, I learned to defib people in 1978. So we've been doing it for a while. And you know, the bottom line is they're not in very good shape to start with. And what we're doing there is going to hopefully get them back into a better condition. But I appreciate your concerns, Councilman Serrano, but, and Craig can certainly do some research to back that up, but I'm very comfortable. And the other thing I'm comfortable with is this product is, you can mix and match different products similar to this, but this product is manufactured by Physio Control, which also manufactures the LifePak 15s that we use. So I feel that we have a good compatibility with that.
And I certainly appreciate that information, and I don't need a book from Craig, you know, just quick book is fine. You know, again, just look at the contract, make sure there's no unexposed liability as we purchase these products. That'd be the only concern. And I agree that, you know, we need to adapt to technology as your 42-year career, congratulations, has shown. So I'm not naysaying this. My job is to point out potential risk where I see it.
That was actually really good math, but I actually started in 74. I didn't learn to defib till 78.
Well, hopefully you didn't have anyone in the first four.
Mr. Serrano, I appreciate the question. I was actually thinking the same thing, but figured if my life was on the line, you know, I figured that there was something in place. But thank you for bringing up the question and looking into that. Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, this is Councilmember Maloney. I just want to ask real quick about replacement costs and what's the lifespan of these things. You know, $56,000 for initial investment is, you know, as Ms. Roach said earlier, very worthwhile. Are these annually replaced every couple years? Do we have an idea on that?
No, they're actually, we expect a minimum of 5 years. And that account that we have right now, the account currently was established to replace our life packs themselves, which retail for about $35,000 a piece. These automatic defibs sell for about $15,000 each. We have, as of the end of this year, we'll have $462,000 in that account. And we have, as I said, we had budgeted to replace a life pack every 5 years, but we're finding that we're getting a little bit longer out of that. So we've been able to delay some replacements. So I think we're very responsibly revenued in that account to replace both the light packs and the automated defib or CPR machines.
Great. And my only other question was, obviously we have a number of different sizes and shapes of people who may need this assistance. Will this serve our whole community, or is there some people that are out of range for what this works for and is going to require, you know, how does that compare? How does it work for our population?
We can use them on smaller individuals. There is a size limit as they get too big that we're not able to do it, and you have to go back to manual CPR.
Okay. But this will work for most everyone that we have to respond to?
Well, what we've been told is probably, and what we've looked at is probably 75 to 80% of the CPRs that we do or more.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Council, for the questions. I know you're looking after me there, Mr. Maloney. So anyway, along the same subject, assistance to firefighters grant, Mr. Bob Gear, want to go ahead and just continue on with the next subject?
I do. I was going to try and share my camera. Did it work this time? I feel really disconnected not being on the camera.
Well, we can see you now.
You can see the gray here, Pete. That's why it's 1974.
I'm trying to earn mine too.
Okay, so we've been actually applying for grants for the last couple of years to replace our self-contained breathing apparatus. They're just getting a little bit over 10 years old. We also have been budgeting every year to replace them at 15 because that's the absolute maximum life that we're allowed to use them. We have some that are pushing the 12 to 14 year range, and most of the rest of them are in the 10-year range. But I'm happy to tell council that we received a assistance to firefighter grant to replace 58 SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus. The grant was for $416,000. It requires a match of $41,000 from our replacement fund. We have about $150,000 in that replacement fund set aside, which we've been budgeting for the last few years in case we had to purchase them ourselves in when they hit 15 years, which I'm not going to try and do the math. I'm not that good at it, but I am happy to say that we've received a grant, and Mr. Zabel has asked us to move ahead with the grant, even though the agenda report does look for council approval. So I'm hoping that we get council approval. The new SCBAs have quite a few ergonomic designs to improve the wearing of them, specifically taking a lot of the electronics out of the headset and moving it back onto your back so that it doesn't put as much weight on your back. And as we move ahead in the future with more sophisticated portable radio systems, we'll have the capability to monitor firefighters' air supply and their movement through their radio through these SCBA. So that'll be a significant improvement down the road. It's going to require us to upgrade our radios, which is something that's coming up in the next few years that we're looking towards having to do, but a lot of significant safety improvements with these SCBA. So with that, I'll turn it over. Sorry we don't have slides again to show the SCBA, but I'll turn it over to council for questions.
Mr. Gear, what are we doing with the old equipment if this gets passed? Is it going to be accessed or reused by another organization? Are we donating? What's the plan for the old equipment?
We'll put it out there for another organization. To be honest, the value is fairly limited because it only has somewhere between about a 4 to no year life left on some of the different pieces. But we'll put it out there for someone to try and use because for some agencies that's better than what they have right now.
Okay, well, good. That's good to hear. I'd like to get them all used up and have somebody take advantage of it. So, any other questions from council?
Yeah, let's go. Go ahead.
Thanks. Just real quick, just on the thought of what we can do with it. I know we've talked about some partnerships with Colima and other places that might be able to use this that aren't maybe not local jurisdictions. And yeah, that would certainly be something we should hopefully consider. Otherwise, I just want to say that I'm in favor of this, especially with the simple fact is we do need to modernize these things, and the more we can reduce the wear and tear on our firefighters, the better. The longer they'll be able to serve, the more likely they're going to be able to save their own lives as the lives of others if they get in trouble. So, thank you.
Councilwoman Barajas, just real quick, Pete. Wanted to comment, no question, just a quick comment. When I was there at the station for the training, for the day of the training, I did ask about the equipment. I noticed some of the guys that were training were not using their full gear. What was explained was that some of the gear was already so outdated that pieces could not be replaced any longer. Is that correct?
Yes, the current SCBA we have are really, they're probably 3 NFPA versions behind, and we're having trouble acquiring parts, and that's one of the reasons we were able to qualify or be eligible for this grant award and got the award.
Perfect. I am fully supportive of this. I know we need to get the gear, the proper gear for our firefighters. They're out there exposing their lives, saving lives, and so the least we could do is provide them with the necessary gear that they need. Thank you.
I have nothing else to add. Councilman Maloney had the same line of thought that I did, which is if we can't reuse this within our country, we have a sister city. And one of the intents was to help out with equipment such as this, where they may not require the same type of stringent certification. So, let's do what we can with it and get it reused or used. So thank you.
And how good to have excuse me, how good that it requires just 10% of our funds. I mean, so kudos to getting the grant for this as well. So it sounds like we're all on board, or at least the majority is on board at this point. So thank you very much, Chief Gear.
Thank you, Council.
All right. Are we saving the best for last or the shortest for last? I'm not sure, but anyway, we have Steve Worley here today to talk to us about our PWRF pre-treatment update. Mr. Worley, how are you doing tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Mind if I take my mask off? I think I'm far enough away from everybody.
That's correct.
That'd be great. Well, good evening. Tonight, I wanted to take this opportunity to give council an update on our processed water reuse facility. You may recall that back in May of 2019, we had one of our consultants come and give an update on where we were at relative to the reuse facility. And so we thought that it would be a good time to share with you things that have taken place since then. Now, I want to start out by saying there's going to be a lot of information to cover tonight, and I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. So if I go too fast or too slow, feel free to stop me and let me go, or let me know if you want me to speed up or slow down. Okay? And we'll go ahead and get started. So
I guess what I would like to do at first is, you don't have a jar of liquid to show us or anything, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So tonight we're going to talk about several things. And first off, what I'm going to do is go through the current operation a little bit, because when I do that, everybody will have a better understanding of how the future improvements all tie together. So I'm going to review that very quickly. Then I'm going to give you an update on the projects that we're doing. We're going to talk about the pre-treatment update. We're going to talk a little bit about the 2020 Farm Operations Report and how that ties in with the pre-treatment update and the VE study results. The VE stands for Value Engineering Study results. We're going to talk briefly about other options and consider rethinking the PWRF business model, and then we'll open it up for discussion tonight. So with that, I wanted to start out first by reminding everybody where each of the different areas of processors are located. And on this slide, you will see that there are two areas. On the left is the Foster Wells service area. This is the area west of the PWRF and west of Highway 395. And the picture on the right is the Columbia East service area. And this is located south of the reuse facility, right around where the area of the Pasco-Colotis Highway is located. So one is west of the facility, one is south of the facility, and both of them pump up to the reuse facility. So the way our current operations work right now is shown in this slide here. We have three processors that discharge to the Foster Wells area, Research, Twin City Foods, and Pasco Processing. They go through a lift station, and we pump their wastewater up to the reuse facility. And we have, to the Columbia East area to the south, we have Simplot that pumps their flows up to the reuse facility, and FreezePack flows their discharge to Simplot, which then picks it up and sends it up to the reuse facility. And Grimway right now, you can see, goes to our wastewater treatment plant. Now, from the reuse facility, or the PWRF, you can see kind of an aerial photo there. We partially treat the water, and then we pump that water out onto the 14 farm circles that you see in that picture. And then we use that water to help grow crops. So that's how the current operation works. One of the areas that we're working on immediately is to get Grimway connected to the reuse facility with the new Columbia East lift station. You'll hear me talk about that tonight, and that is located in this southern area where these three processors are located.
Mr. Worley, just a quick question. Is there any pre-treatment processes happening before it actually gets pumped up to the reuse facility?
The only pre-treatment per se is the removal of some of the sediment from some of the processors. They have facilities within their buildings that try to take out as much sediment as they possibly can before they send the wastewater up to the reuse facility. Other than that, There is one processor, Grimway, who has a stabilization pond or an equalization pond, and that pond provides quite a bit of treatment. They also have some other treatment processes that they do, and they are required to do that because they're currently flowing their discharge to the wastewater treatment plant. None of the other processors have that level of treatment before going to the reuse facility.
So is there an issue with, I mean, if they just pump, I guess I'm just more concerned about everything going up to the reuse facility and getting filled up again and having to do more work or work such as we're doing now where you have to be hauling it away the way we're doing it now. Is that something that is beyond this presentation or?
No, that's exactly what this presentation is about, because some of the options that you're going to see tonight are related to that, and I think are going to help solve the problems that we're currently having now.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Great question though. So this is the current facility as we use it now. One of the things that I'll mention is you'll see the line from the Foster Wells area, the Research Twin City Foods and Pasco Processing. It shows a single line going from the pump station to the reuse facility. We actually just recently installed last year a second force main, which is a redundant line to help with the aging of the two existing lines that were there. And it turned out that we actually were able to use that redundant line earlier this year, when the old line failed and we had to switch the flows from the old line to the new line. So it's a good example of looking ahead and preparing for inevitabilities. So one of the things I wanted to also mention is that from the city-owned farm fields, as most of you know, we lease those farm fields to local farmers. Those farmers grow crops on those fields that they then sell or use in their own operations. Most of the time they grow alfalfa, triticale, crops like corn, potatoes, crops that are conducive to the uptake of nitrogen is the key issue. So they are limited on what they can grow because the crop has to be able to take up nitrogen. So they sell the crops. You can see that I've got some dollar signs there. They represent the fact that potatoes have a higher value to the farmers than alfalfa does. The leases that we get from the farmers vary by the type of crop that's able to be used. The money that the city uses from those farm leases goes into the operations and maintenance of the farm fields and all the pivots and wells and everything else to help operate those farm fields. And then some of the money that's left over goes into the Economic Development Fund within the city. Now, keep in mind that this system requires that we have a permit with Department of Ecology to make sure that we are managing this in a way that does not create pollution to groundwater beneath the farm fields. That's why we have to go through and monitor everything and meet those permit limits. So it's a big system that all works together. Okay? So real quick, the updates on all of the capital projects that we're doing. We completed the Columbia East Lift Station, which I mentioned before. We did the Foster Wells redundant force main, and we did the sediment pond cleaning. And that was part of the jar that was brought to council that one evening where we were able to clean that pond that they were complaining about. And so that is about ready to finish up. The rest of the projects that are listed here are ones that are currently underway. We do have a new irrigation pump station, which you can see the pictures there on the slide, the building and then the pumps inside of it. We are still working on the force main to get from the lift station at the Columbia East area up to the reuse facility. We've got all of the easements necessary except for one property owner, which is the Department of Natural Resources. We are working with them to get that. The final design is complete. And we are currently working with federal EDA, which is the Economic Development Agency, to get additional funding to help pay for the force main for Columbia East. We have a $3 million grant, up to a $3 million grant right now. We're trying to work with them to try to double that.
Mr. Worley can jump in. You said we're about to wrap up the sediment pond cleaning project. Is there a noticeable difference in the odors, or are we not quite there yet? Have we heard anything from the residents?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we did. I reached out to them to find out, since we are quite a ways into it. We're not completely empty, but we're quite a ways. And so I called out and talked to 2 of the owners that were here previously, and it didn't address the odors completely. I think some of the stirring up of the material as it's being removed from the sediment pond probably created a lot of odor. But it's not as much as it was before, but there is still some odor. And I got notified just recently this weekend that there was still some odor. So it didn't 100% clean it. And a lot of it has to do with the prevailing winds. And if we have a low pressure system and the winds are blowing the right direction, it just blows right through the neighbors' yards. And so I think some of what we're going to share with you tonight might help address some of that as we look towards making improvements at the reuse facility for the pretreatment process. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, Dan, I appreciate that. I appreciate that we've, one, made improvements and two, invested $1.5 million. So unquestionably, we're doing what we can so far. Maybe there's more that can be done, as you're alluding to, but I appreciate that we're trying to address the issue.
You bet. Moving on, the Foster Wells lift station replumbing. We've got some changes we want to make inside the Foster Wells lift station to make the pump system work more efficiently. The pretreatment alternative selection, that's what's going to be a lot of our focus tonight. So we'll get into that in just a moment. And then one of the things that we're also working on is the Grimway connection to the Columbia East lift station. The design on that project has just started, so we will be looking at bringing Grimway in. With that, let's get into the pretreatment options. This is the exciting part. So tonight, one of the things that we had talked about previously was completing the engineering report and the facility plan. It's a document that's required by ecology because we have a permitted facility, and anytime we want to make any improvements, we have to get it reviewed and approved by ecology. That has been done as of now. And in that plan, there was a proposed treatment improvements of, and I have to make a correction here, that slide says 17.2 million. It should say 19.7. And if you change that to 19.7, it will match a later slide. I pulled this number off of an older table, and the other slide has numbers from a newer table. And so if you can make that correction, that would be great. Then if we add biological nitrogen removal to help improve the water that goes out onto the farm fields, that would be an additional 36 million added to the 19.7. And that's what the proposal is within the facility plan. From that point, the next step in the process is to hire a consultant to do the final design of those improvements. So we went out with an RFQ process, which is a request for qualifications. We had 3 consultants respond. And interestingly enough, 2 out of the 3 engineering consultants proposed different processes than what was in the facility plan. One of them proposed an anaerobic treatment process, another one proposed an aerobic treatment process, and then of course, PACE engineers proposed what was in the facility plan. The selection committee had a difficult time figuring out what to do next. So what we decided to do was to hire one of the consultants and do a value engineering study and have them evaluate all 3 of those options so that they can give that information to us so we knew which direction to go. So we did that. Now, with that value engineering study, the consultant that we hired did something different than what was in the facility plan. And this slide shows that. The facility plan, which was completed or was being done in 2018, it used data from the processors that was from 2016 and 2017 because that was the data we had available at the time that this plan was being put together. When PACE first started doing the engineering study, they realized that that data was not as robust as it should be. They recommended that we get more sampling data from the reuse facility. So we did that. So we gathered information and more data in 2018 and 2019. That's the data that RH2 used in the value engineering study. And so we pulled the data from flows coming into the reuse facility. And what we learned was that there's much higher concentrations of stuff in the water compared to what the processors were sending to us in their monthly reports. And I show on this slide 3 different constituents, BOD, TSS and TNN. BOD is a biochemical oxygen demand. It's a wastewater constituent that is used to size facilities. And you can see that we go from 43,000 pounds per day to 120. So that's like 3 times higher in loadings for BOD than what was estimated in the facility plan. The same kind of increases are seen in the total suspended solids, which is the TSS, and in the total nitrogen. The amount of nitrogen was much higher when we take the readings and the samples at the reuse facility compared to the reports we were getting from the processors. So as we look at the information from tonight, keep in mind that the information we're presenting tonight related to the pretreatment has higher concentrations of these constituents, more so than what was in the facility plan. So just keep that in mind, and we'll continue to walk through this. Now, before I move on, we talked about the facility plan. We talked about the VE study, which is the one in the middle. Now I want to shift real quick to an annual farm report that we do, and then I'm going to come back to the VE study, okay? So that's what this slide shows. So I'm going to compare the data that was used in the VE study to the farm operations report. Now, CES is a company that works for us annually to prepare a farm operations report. It's a requirement of ecology to make sure that we are doing everything that our permit says. So they take tissue samples of the crops, they take soil samples of the soil, they take water samples of the water, and they make sure that we are treating the land application process correctly. In that report for 2020, the results showed a much higher loading of BOD, water, and nitrogen than in previous years. And so it relates to what RH2 found in the 2018 and 2019 data. And so we're seeing a correlation that's basically validating each other. And so you can see in this slide, we've got 14 farm circles. Total processed water nitrogen was 732 pounds. Our limit is 866 pounds allowed by our permit. So we're using up 85.6% of our available nitrogen capacity in our farm fields. And that is without Grimway there yet. That is just with the 5 processors that we have. The processors flows.
Mr. Worley?
Yes.
Is that an annual amount, or is this something that accumulates?
That's an annual amount.
I guess I don't know much about nitrogen.
That's an annual amount.
Are we seeing sort of accumulations that are going to start affecting the groundwater, or is this a sustainable number we're at right now?
Right now, this is not impacting groundwater. The limits are set so that it ensures that we do not impact groundwater. Once we start going above these permitted limits, then the question is, are we going to start impacting groundwater?
Thank you.
You bet. So the processors' flows are starting to increase. Each of the processors want to do more and more. And so they have always kept their flows below their permitted limits, but now they're starting to creep up and they're starting to get up to their permitted limits. One of the things that this report notices is that the nitrogen levels have increased about 250%. The nitrogen loadings are greater. We're not sure why yet, but what that means is in order for us to stay under our permit limits on the farm circles, we may need more farm circles, or we have to get the nitrogen out of the water. One or the other. What's that? Or both, or a combination of both, yes. So this report ties with some of the data that RH2 used in the value engineering study. So,
good question.
You bet.
Maybe it's not a very smart question, but does the nitrogen limits, is there any correlation there with order?
Mayor Martinez, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I had shut it off. So my question is there any correlation between the nitrogen levels and odor levels?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
I believe the odor is related to the BOD.
Okay, all right.
And the fact that we're storing some of that sediment and solids and BOD in the ponds that we have at the reuse facility.
Okay, thank you.
That's creating the odor. So now, as I showed in the other slide, I'm going to come back to the VE study from RH2. And so RH2 went through a process and did engineering. They basically took the information from the flows and the sampling from the reuse facility. And they designed 2 different facilities, sized them, calculated what the annual O&M cost is going to be, and presented that to us in the report. These are the 2 options that we had them evaluate. I'm not going to go into details, but they're 2 different types of processes that get used. And I just wanted to show to the level of detail that they went through on this. And here are 2 pictures of each of those as well. The first one on the left is what's called the low rate anaerobic digester. And that's basically a very large covered pond. And it's built up in an embankment type, and then there's different cells within it, and the flow goes through it. And so it's basically a very high-tech pond that's covered. So it's very engineering-ish. And then the same with the DAF system and the Biolac air diffuser, basically using air to help treat the water. The other one does not use air. That's why it's called an anaerobic system. So here's the crux of the final results of the VE study. Basically, the low-rate anaerobic digester has no nitrogen removal, has an annual O&M cost of $1.1 million. So the total cost is about $54 million to build this facility. This includes Grimway, so it handles 6 of our processors. Now, the parentheses number is if we add a biological nitrogen removal system to help reduce some of the nitrogen, then it would be a $69 million project. The DAF system, which is alternative 2, because of the process that gets used, already has a 50% nitrogen removal, but it has an O&M cost of about $5.7 million per year. So the total cost of that system is the $73.8 million. And the facility plan, or the FP, we have determined that it is no longer a feasible alternative. And we verified this with PACE engineers, and they said basically with the loadings that we're seeing now, what's proposed in the facility plan wouldn't work. Originally, they were proposing $19.7 million, but if you add the biological nitrogen removal to that system as well, you would be looking at a $55 million proposal. So you can see by this value engineering study, the cost of the pretreatment improvement systems have increased significantly in cost compared to what was originally being proposed. So that brought up a lot of questions on our part. What do we do? So here are the options that we looked at. First was the LRAD that we talked about, the DAF system that we mentioned already. Option 3 is the facility plan, which is no longer feasible. The other option we are now considering and bringing back on the table is an increase in the land treatment system. Originally, we thought this was too expensive an option. But given the results of the value engineering study, all of a sudden this may not be too expensive of an option. So we are having a consultant look at this option. They're going to evaluate how much land or crop circles or farm circles are needed in order to treat the flows, including Grimway, and buy the circles, put in the pivots, drill the wells, and have the winter storage. And so we'll be able to bring that information back to you when we get it. But right now, just looking at the cost of land right now makes it a very expensive option. Very similar to the other options, maybe a little bit less. So these are 4 options. So the question was, are there any other options? Should we be looking at something else? And so one of the thoughts that was brought to our attention is, what if we rethink the business model for the PWRF? What if we were able to invest in a system that is sustainable, expandable, and a long-term system? What if we were able to bring Lamb Weston into the reuse facility? They've wanted to come in. Up to this point, we've said, no, we don't have the capacity on the farm circles to bring you in. But what if we were to come up with a new way to do it? They also have a land treatment system, and if we were able to bring them in, we would be able to eliminate their land treatment system as well, which they get a lot of complaints about odor. What if we were to build an environmentally friendly facility, one that state and federal agencies were so attracted by that they would support it financially? And what if this facility could be used as a model for other people in Eastern Washington or throughout the state or even other states? And what if we came up with a system that we could use as a marketing tool to bring other high-tech industries to Pasco? What if we could find a turnkey project where a firm would design, build, and train the staff on how to operate it? And what if we were able to do that in 2 years? Would such a business model be possible? And the answer is a company called Enrigo has proposed this very option. It's interesting because they came to me in late December last year, and they wanted to understand more about our reuse facility. And once I told them about how it is our current operation works, they were just excited about what they can provide. And so our staff, Maria, Sarah, our CIP manager, and myself, worked with the Enrigo folks. We gave them all the data we could from the facility plan, the financial information from our finance department, and everything else. And they came up with an engineering study. And they took all that information and made a proposal to us. And so here's the proposal. Their proposal is to design and build a water treatment and biogas plant. And the idea of this option is to treat, for the first step, treat the processed wastewater so that it meets groundwater standards. And what that means is that we would have 100% nitrogen removal through a membrane process in treating the water. It eliminates all of the pH issues, all the BOD, TSS, FDS. FDS is fixed dissolved solids. And all of that would be taken care of because we treat the water to a much higher level. From that, we would be able to irrigate the crops in the fields with clean water instead of partially treated water. With clean water, the farmers can grow any crop on the farm circles. And those crops would be based on market demands, not based on treatment needs. In other words, you don't have to worry about nitrogen uptake. They could grow whatever the market says is needed. With that, we could also use that water to recharge the groundwater. Once it meets groundwater standards, we are able, by ecology rules, to put that water back in the ground and recharge groundwater. What that means is, while the processes are running during the winter, we don't have to store their flows in storage ponds, which reduces odors. We would be able to treat this water all year long. And anything we couldn't put on the farm fields during the winter, we would inject into the ground and recharge the groundwater. With that, the groundwater flows to the Columbia River. We would be able to receive water rights credits from ecology. Therefore, putting millions of gallons in the ground means we could withdraw more water out of the Columbia River. So it's a true recycling of the whole process. We supply clean water to the processors. They use it. They send us their dirty water. We clean the water. We put the water back in the ground. And so it just gets recycled.
Mr. Worley, this is Councilmember Roach. I have a question about this company. Have they built this treatment facility elsewhere?
I don't believe they've built this same treatment facility, but they have built both of these facilities in other places. And not in the United States, but in other parts of the world. This company is from Norway, and we have learned that many of the Scandinavian countries have advanced their water treatment and biogas technologies because they have had to, because they don't have the land areas that we do here in the United States. And so they have had to come up with new technologies to treat and reuse their waste. And this is the methods that they use. And I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but there was a group of folks, some of them being state legislators and some of them being our lobbyists, went to Denmark last September, and they visited some of these biogas plants, and they were very impressed with the technology and the abilities of those plants to reuse waste. And so they are very interested in trying to bring some of that technology to Washington State. That answer your question?
Thank you.
You bet. So the second part of their proposal is to do what's called a biogas plant. And the idea here is to take the biosolids, which is all the cuttings from all of the vegetables that are being produced, and create from that waste marketable products. And the idea is to generate revenue by basically burning or biodegrading all of that organic matter, and then using it to turn generators and create electricity that can then be sold to Franklin PUD. And right now, their estimate is approximately $3.4 million per year in revenue that would come back to Pasco by selling electricity to the Franklin PUD. Now, I contacted Franklin PUD, and they are all excited about being able to do this. They actually need electricity, and they thought if we could generate it using waste products, we actually could get a higher dollar per kilowatt hour because of a renewable energy source rather than one being generated from gas or hydro. The other option, which we just heard about, and I don't know too much about it, is to do renewable natural gas. And instead of generating electricity, we could generate natural gas and pump it into the system and sell it to other people. This has been done by other people here in Washington State. Don't have a lot of information on this, but that is an option. The last option, or I shouldn't say the last, one of the other options is based on the waste product from the biogas plant is high-class fertilizer that we would then sell to local farmers, and they would use it to put on their farm fields. So the revenues that would be generated by selling these items would more than cover the annual O&M costs to run the plant. Enrigo is proposing to do a turnkey solution. They would design it, they would build it, they would train our staff, and interestingly enough, they also are offering to finance the project for us as well. And they say they could get it done in 2 years. So they also design it in a modular type system, which means that it is easily expandable for new processors. And one of the new areas that is being developed is the Port of Pasco's Ryman Center Industrial Park. And so there may be other processors that can come in that if we went with this kind of system, we could easily add to it that would accept flows from another processor very easily. So this is a schematic of what Enrigo is proposing. I'm not going to go through it with you in detail, but I wanted you to see that they have put a lot of thought and effort and engineering into this process and this proposal. So here's how it would work. Going back to the original graphic that I had before of our existing system, this is how the new system would work if Enrigo's proposal goes through. These are the 6 processors that we have currently. We would add 2 more processors. One is Baker Produce, which is currently building a new plant up by Foster Wells. And then we would add Lamb Weston. Their wastewater would go to a water treatment plant up at the reuse facility. That clean water would meet groundwater standards and would go to our farm fields. With no nitrogen limit to be concerned about, we would no longer need to meet any DOE permit limits. From that, we would be able to continue to lease the farm fields to the farmers. They would be able to grow a much better crop because we're irrigating them with clean water now instead of partially clean water. The value of the crops that they get are much higher. They would be able to sell them for more. And the leases the city would be able to get would be higher because the farmers could produce better crops. And so we would still propose to do the same thing, I assume, and that is to have the revenue from the leases pay for the O&M of the farm fields, and then any additional money could go back into the Economic Development Fund. With that also, we would be able to get water rights credits for being able to operate the water treatment plant all year long, and any water we don't put on the farm fields, we could put in the ground and get water right credits. Now, I'll save that for later. The second part of it is the biosolids would go to a biogas plant from all of the processors. That would be in turn used to generate electricity, and we would sell that to Franklin PUD. The fertilizer that I mentioned, we would sell to the farmers, and that would generate revenue. And currently, Enrigo is proposing or estimating about $5 million per year in revenue from those 2 sources. Now, there is one other source, and that is heat. Biogas plants produce a lot of heat, which means very high heated water. So one of the things that we could do is we could plumb that water back to the processors and have them use that water to heat their water and reduce their natural gas bill. They use natural gas to run boilers to heat water. They could use the heat from the biogas plant to heat their water instead of natural gas. So that would be a potential source of additional revenue. So some of the items related to option 5 is that this type of proposal would be attractive to state and federal funding agencies. I have talked with the Department of Ecology, all 4 of their divisions, the Water Quality, Water Resources, Office of Columbia River, and their Aquifer Storage and Recovery Office. And they think that this proposal, if it is valid, they're excited about it. This is exactly the kind of thing that they shoot for when they see these kinds of proposals. I've also talked with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, and this is the type of project that they like to fund as well. And they have a Title 16 Water Reclamation and Reuse program that we could potentially put in an application for and get funding for that as well. And then I also talked to the Center of Sustainable Infrastructure here in Washington State, and they may be interested in helping us find ways to support a legislative funding request for this option, or perhaps pursue other options similar to this as well. This group works with communities to get to options as what this is proposing, looking at ways to find a sustainable, reusable process. So the bottom line on this one, water treatment plus biogas plant, 100% nitrogen removal, annual O&M, $3.5 million, annual revenues, $5 million. The cost of this one is $95 million, much higher than the other ones. Now, in order to find out if this option is truly viable, we would need to have Enrico do a pilot study or an engineering report. They need to come in and measure our flows and measure the constituents in it, because they're not going to use our numbers. If they're going to guarantee that they can meet all of the requirements, they want to do the measuring of the flows themselves and then do the engineering studies. And it would take about 3 months in order to do this pilot study. Let's see. So the question is before us is, what do we do now? Which option is best for the processors and for Pasco? Should we look at option 1 with an LRAD? Should we look at option 2 with a DAF system? We're going to have information soon on an option 4 where we increase the land treatment system and just expand our current operation. Or do we look at option 5, which looks into water treatment and biogas? With any of these options, we have to consider what are the financing options available? What do those financing options mean to the city in terms of debt service? We have to be careful not to indebt the city too much that we can't pay for other future infrastructure improvements with water, wastewater, and irrigation. Are there state and federal grant assistance available? There is likely that assistance for option 5. Are there other interim options for us to explore? So that's basically the presentation for tonight. That's 37 minutes.
Yeah,
it is a lot.
It's a lot of information, and I think council hopefully understands from this presentation there's still a lot to work through, but we have a few viable options. I think we have some options that probably aren't there for us anymore if this system's going to expand, if it's going to support Ryman, if it's going to potentially absorb Lamb Weston, which is looking for a place. You know, they're not feeling long-term that their circles are viable where they're at. It's a bit of a moving target, as you're hearing, and you know that's one of the reasons why I had to come and talk to you tonight, because you know as we learn more and as we uncrack this, you know we're learning more and more. We're going to be taking on Grimway pretty soon. Certainly, there's interest from future users as well as the expansion needs of our current users that we have on the system, as Steve mentioned earlier. Aside from the valuations, Steve talked about another piece of this is we're going to be doing a thorough business analysis of the most likely options and those most capable of accommodating what's to come. We'll be bringing that information all back to council with a recommendation. Right now, we really don't have a recommendation. I think where we're at today is, you know, we have, you heard Steve talk about the studies, we have the business analysis, and then we have the question of a pilot study, which I think, you know, that's $100,000 investment. Certainly we have funds in our economic development fund that we could apply towards that. And I think what you could probably expect to see from us in the not too distant future is a request to be able to use some of those dollars to parse out that particular option, so we can get that engineering analysis done and be able to have good, thorough information on our options for council to consider before you make what's going to be a pretty significant decision.
Well, I've always credited and just admired the vision of...
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yes, sorry about that. I've always admired the vision of the prior councils to come up with this, what we have today. But obviously, it was such a great vision that it's something we need to expand on, and this takes it to another level. So yes, this is a lot to chew on, a lot to think about, and looking forward to see what can become of this. But obviously, making sure we're careful with the parameters we have to, you know, take care of our debt service and all the other things we have to consider to run the city. I mean, it sounds wonderful. It sounds like in being involved in environmental, this is a ticket, but you know, we just have to keep studying to see if it's going to be feasible or not. So, comments, questions from the council?
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes.
Yeah, obviously, option 5 checks a lot of boxes for me as far as the partnerships that are potential here, the innovation, the regenerative design, a lot of this. And so I appreciate that staff is looking into different options and putting lots of thought into this. I think if we were to go what sounds the sexiest, would require the most careful consideration and the most study. And so, but I'm very excited to see something like this come before us. I don't know if that's the way that we will go. I don't know if that's going to pencil out the best, but I'm certainly excited about exploring it.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Anybody else? Well, we definitely have time to go ahead.
Yeah, this is Serrano. I love the shiny object as well. I guess, Mr. Worley, it looked like it was about 90 days to do the analysis or some type of preliminary analysis on the Enrigo project. Do we lose anything aside from, it sounds like Mr. Zabel indicated $100,000 to pay for the study and 90 days, but does that 90 days lose us something?
No, I do not believe so. I think it actually provides us a lot of valuable information.
Okay, and in the event that we went that route and it took 2 years to get it funded, built, operators trained, etc., is there like a stopgap that we need to put in place, whether that's lease land for 2 years, or is there something else, another component that we'd have to stop the bleeding, if you will, for the next 2 years?
And that is something that's being looked at right now with the alternate 4 or the option 4, expanding our land treatment system. We are also looking at what would need to be done immediately to address our current processors between now and the time we are able to start construction of any new type of facility. So whether that's more winter storage or more options for leasing property to put water on for farm circles, we are looking into those as well.
Yeah, I would ask council to recall we have some capacity for nitrogen. The BOD and suspended solids aren't really a huge issue on the land application, but nitrogen's our limiting factor, and you know, even just catching up on our own report, we just picked up a half a circle.
We did.
Yeah, from DNR. So we have a
Yes.
little bit more than what's even in this PowerPoint that it just kind of clicked in my mind
You're right.
recently. And we have to sell half of it per an agreement the city made with
Bill Middleton.
Middleton, yeah, years ago. We have to sell, we have a full circle, but we need to sell half of it to him. And we have yet to have those discussions whether that additional half would be available for land application from the processed water reuse. We think it will be, rather than having two pivots out there doing half duty. Probably it makes sense to have one full circle, but we do have a, you know, one other, I think, dynamic we need to keep in mind is we have a small group of users out there, about 6 people connected to the current system. And of course, one of their, and they've been, some of them been there since the beginning. Others are addition, and then Grimway is going to join in. Their concern is going to be, this is what we need to build to serve us, is X amount of dollars, whether that's 40 million or 45 million or whatever it takes to serve them today into at least the first couple phases of their expansion, which is maybe out 10 or 15 years. And so they're going to be concerned. You know, I don't want to say it's a sensitive group in terms of thin skin, but it's a sensitive group in terms of cost. And so they're going to want to be concerned with whatever investment they put in is only the investment needed to accommodate their needs, their company's needs. You know, they're not going to want to put capacity or build capacity for somebody else. You know, they're not going to want to put their money out there in that way. So that's going to be kind of the burden on us. And then what can we attract from potential partners? As Steve mentioned, the federal agencies that he's talked to, as well as state agencies and legislative, you know, capital allocations, those type of things. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Wardy, I'll give one more opportunity for council.
This is Councilmember Roach, and just to, comment on what was just last said, I'd be interested in knowing with this Enrigo project, with the ticket on this being really high, what is the range and what will be the range of available funding through state and federal agencies to help mitigate, some of that ticket price there? Because although I would never use the descriptor sexy for anything that has to do with processed water reuse facility. I do like innovative and new shiny things, but that cost makes me feel like we really have to do our due diligence here in making sure we come out ahead on this.
It's hard to say because so many of the grant programs vary in what they're able or willing to fund. And just in talking to several different ones, they all do things a little bit differently. And so, but what my hope would be is if we do decide to go that route, my goal would be to pursue additional funding partners that would get the cost of that proposal down to less than what the other options are to our existing processors. And I think with as innovative as the Enrigo proposal is, we have a higher potential to do that than with any of the other options. And we do have one processor who is willing to make a substantial investment in that facility.
Okay. Well, Mr.
This is
Wardy.
Councilmember Maloney.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Maloney.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Serrano, for covering the timing issue. That was my number one concern. But I certainly, when we talk about partners, I believe with our original processed water reuse facility, we did a significant partnership with the Port of Pasco. So I was actually pretty surprised to see that they weren't named as a potential funding and partner agency on this. And I know Mr. Worley, I know you'll look into discuss this with them further, of course. So I'm no question. I was just surprised to see that. I am wondering about the science behind this whole thing. So, you know, whenever something's not been done in the U.S. before, there's always all sorts of hurdles to get through, and so it may be. I would expect that we may need a more specialized company to take a look and make sure this is really a feasible option. So I hope we can look into, you know, some sort of agency or some sort of organization that can help really piece that together for us. I imagine this is out of our skill set, as capable as our engineering staff is, and as you know, as capable as the local contractors we have are. This is really something different. And I would be very interested in understanding that there were some components of this that are being done through this in the state at this time. So I heard you say something about you know, using the bioproducts for to create electricity. That's something that there's plants within Washington State that are currently doing. And other things like that. I'd be really interested to understand that picture better. Even if it's only a piece of what this plant would be proposed to do, I'd be interested in digging into that more. I appreciate that we have some tried and true options that will keep us doing what we're doing and be able to serve that expanded need as well. So it's exciting, it's interesting. First of a kind is one of those things that you read about in the paper, and either the people who helped that along are treated very well, or they're treated very, very badly. And so I know we're going to dig in a lot deeper before we make any commitment. I'm positive the rest of the council and is interested in that as well. So thank you.
You bet. There's lots of skepticism about it. We've all had situations where salesmen have come and promised us all kinds of things, and it hasn't panned out. The one thing I can say is that the processors, when we talked to them last, they are interested in having Enrigo give them a presentation. So we are scheduled to do that next week.
Yeah, that was actually one of our tests before we even brought this to council, was to make sure that our partners were even interested. And then I did want to probably just address the Port of Pasco. Maybe we were remiss we didn't name them as a partner. That they're who we're working with, of course, on the Ryman process, and we met with them as recently as yesterday to talk about options and service to that new Ryman industrial area. So the port's very, very much involved. So.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Zabel, one of the things I'd add to that is I know we're talking about selling, for example, electricity to the PUD. That would, if they're looking at expanding their supply, they'd be having to make a significant capital investment in their electric generation. So they might be an interested capital partner as well. Although we may, you know, lose some of the operating revenue in the future, it would at least give us an opportunity to get the thing off the ground if that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and they have some requirements to look at alternative energy sources as well. So
and
that's a good incentive for them.
And this would fit right in with that requirement.
All right.
Well, and one thing I'd just like to raise really quickly is I recall during the MyTry 2030, one of the discussions was agritourism, not just tourism, which is one of the issues we hit on Saturday afternoon in our goal session, but agritourism in particular. And if we are able to successfully do this, Mr. Worley, you already mentioned that other folks around the state would probably find high interest. So I don't know to the extent that we could use this, maybe partner with WSU, potentially Tri-Cities, WSU Tri-Cities. And I don't know to what extent the Department of Energy, there are several alternative energy grants out there. I don't know if anything covers biogas, but you know, just spitballing, because again, if we do pursue this, I think my mantra has always been, let's get someone else to pay the ticket.
Agreed.
Okay. Mr. Worley, thank you for the presentation, the opportunity, and looking forward to have more discussions on this in the near future.
You bet.
Sorry to interrupt one more time. Is there any possibility that that presentation next week to the processors could be either recorded and provided to council or something like that, or maybe some detailed notes be made from that? Because I think we're all very interested in this, and some of us can dig a little deeper or interested in digging a little deeper than might be currently, you know, available to us.
You bet. We can certainly record it. We're going to do it in a go-to meeting, and I think we have that capability. So yeah, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you once again, and that is the last formal item on our agenda tonight. We do have, give me 1 second. Next, we go into miscellaneous items, and we have two miscellaneous discussions. For one, and I will go first, and I know Mr. Serrano has one, but I know it's late, and I don't want to take any credit away, but we owe a congratulations to our communications manager, John Funfar. Pasco City Television won 2 awards of honor and is a finalist for its meeting coverage for the Pasco City Council and the Government Programming Awards by the National Association of Telecommunications Officers and Advisors. This is a pretty big deal. The Government Programming Awards are annual awards that recognize excellence in broadcast, cable, multimedia, and electronic programming produced by local government agencies. The programs that won the Award of Honor, honorable mention, was a Category 13 Election Coverage Award of Honor, Pasco Candidate Forum, October 8, 2019, and Category 62 Overall Excellence, Operating Budget to $250,000, Award of Honor, Pasco City Television 2019. And the city is also a finalist for a Government Programming Award to be announced at the virtual annual Government Programming Awards viewing party on Thursday, September 3rd. Congratulations again to our own John Funfar. John, you're a gentleman and a scholar. Every time I go somewhere, you're there before I get there, for the most part, and always there to the very end, and always there to take care of us in our communications with the city. And the work you're doing here is just phenomenal. And when you talk to John, he has this humbling character that, oh, I'm just doing my job. But the reality is that your job makes our life a lot easier, a lot better, and your efforts are truly appreciated. And congratulations on this award. And next time the council has an opportunity to thank John, I'll tell you what, he's an asset to this organization and to the staff. So thank you very much. A little round of applause. Thank you very much, John. Mr. Serrano, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that. So this weekend I had the opportunity to attend and also co-host an event on Road 68, which was a Back the Blue rally. And a couple things. One, across the street from us was Unbound Tri-Cities had a counter protest. And from what I saw, things were fairly peaceful. I didn't see anything that was problematic. Heard some various language from both sides, but that's that, right? I had some, I thought, productive conversations with a BLM leader as well as talking with a couple of Unbound folks. But I do want to present this, which is, I don't know how well it's visible, probably not terribly. It's a poster board with a letter from the Back the Blue sponsors. And ultimately what it says is, we ask you to please continue to provide full funding to our own heroes, Pasco PD. That's kind of the summary of it. There are about 90 signatures on this. So I'm going to give this to Mr. Zabel, even though it's written to Pasco Mayor, City Council members, and the City Manager. I'm going to give it to Mr. Zabel, and maybe he can get it to Chief Roski or someone in the PD. I know these are issues. It's a hard time right now. We have lots of voices calling at us, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least present this signed paper of 90 of our residents asking for us to continue to fund the police. So thank you. I just wanted to present that.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Anybody else with some miscellaneous items? Mr. Zabel?
Just a quick thank you to council. As Councilmember Maloney pointed out, 10 hours of video virtual meeting, and then that doesn't count the number of hours council had. You had a pretty weighty packet to get through, a lot of information, and there was information coming from the community, which was really exciting, something we haven't had before as part of one of our retreats. You had pretty solid stream of information right up until the day of, coming from members of the public that knew you were having your retreat. So there was a lot to review. I thought we had a very productive couple days, and staff will be pulling that together. I know that April had sent out a couple hold the date, or I guess it was a preference, not asking tonight, but just asking that you take a look at that email she sent. She asked you for availability on a couple different days in September, so to get back together and finish up. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
This is Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. I do have just a very quick announcement, and kind of goes with what Councilmember Serrano was talking about, Back the Blue. And so Pasco Police Foundation has these collectible cars, and the money from the sales of these cars goes to the Pasco Police Foundation, which goes then to support our heroes and Back the Blue. So reach out, Officer Ana Ramos, or any of your friendly neighborhood police officers for one of these collectibles. $10, I think. Yeah, just a quick announcement.
Thank you.
This is Councilmember Roach, and after our retreat, I was surprised and to see that in my email inbox, I still had several folks from the Tri-Cities who were emailing about removing the BSL language from our code. And so they let me know that they watched our retreat both days, which is impressive because that's not how I would probably choose to spend my Friday and Saturday. So the question that was asked of me, and I'm sure maybe some of you got it as well, is when will we as a council revisit that as a policy? And so I want to put that out there for mayor and staff and rest of council to consider.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman Roach. I did see that, and I'm working, reviewing it, and I forwarded it over to David so that he knows we got that message as well. Thank you for that. Okay, then we will not be having an executive session tonight. So with that, have a good rest of your evening, and thank you again to Serrano and Zara. It's been a long day for us. We've been working since 5 on city council stuff. So anyway, have a good rest of your night. Stay safe. Let's keep working on bringing our numbers down with COVID, and have a great week. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Have a good night. Bye.